So, hello and welcome to the IELTS Grind. We've got another live stream for you today where we'll be looking at how exactly you should be approaching pie charts and writing about them in task 1. So I've got two things for us to look at today. So the first thing, I'm going to make sure that I talk into the mic here. The first thing we're going to do is to look at some phrases that you can use in order to actually report the percentages from pie charts. And then after that, we're going to be looking at an example from a student, and I will be, correcting that, analyzing that, and giving my feedback to how the student could improve. So hopefully there aren't any issues with sound or picture. So what we're going to do is just jump into the first part. Okay, so we've got Michael who's in the chat. So if at any point you want to know, what's happening, if you have any questions, you can talk to Michael there. And also, if you want to access the documents that we're going to look at later on, you can look in the description and you'll get a link to the Google Doc and you can see what I'm seeing. Also, if you want us to correct your task 1 or task 2 writing, you can actually send us an email and we will do this for you on a live stream. So you'll get some feedback straight away. So I can see some activity in the chat already. Michael's there, so if you want to talk to him. Okay, so let's talk about what we're going to do today. So first of all, we're going to review some sentence structures for pie charts. We're also going to learn what are called sentence frames for pie charts. So a sentence frame is a really good way of increasing your writing score, because what you're going to do is to learn a phrase which you can adapt for many different situations. Now this is important for pie charts because in English there are only certain ways that we can describe data on a pie chart, and if you don't get the correct structure, you're not going to get a very good score in grammar at the very least. So that's what we're going to look at, these sentence frames. We're also going to practice how to adapt them, and we're going to together hopefully correct some common errors that we see with our students. And if you wait around, we're going to also practice how to write some sentences. Hopefully you'll be able to put in some examples into the live chat. If you're actually watching this later on, you can of course leave a comment with your examples. And later on we're going to give you a model answer. Okay, so let's jump into that. Okay, so I'm just checking. Okay, so we're just dealing with a few little issues with the live stream as always. So let's just double check where we are. Are we live? Okay, so I'm just talking to Mike in the chat here. So are we okay, Mike? Okay. Okay, right, so let's go back to what we were doing. Okay, so if we look at the screen, we have a pie chart which is split down the middle, and it's all about the percentage of voters. And you can see below that we've got male and we've got female. Okay, so if you think about how could we describe any part of this pie chart, what sentence could we use? So just think about it for a moment. Okay, so yeah, I will, if you can't see what's on the screen exactly, I will be talking about this. Yeah, so maybe what I'll do is I will just turn off the camera, because you don't want to see me, you just want to see what's on the screen. Okay, so for this part, you'll just see what's on the screen. That's fine. Okay, so let's talk about this. Right, so percentage of voters, what could we say? Well, the best way to describe this would be 50% of voters were male. You could also say 50% of voters were female. Now, if we break this down, there we can see half of the voters were female. Now, if we break this down, the way that we are making this sentence is we start off with the percentage plus the group plus the verb plus the category. So you can see 50% of, that's the percentage. Voters, this is the group within the pie chart. The verb here, we're using the past tense of the verb to be, were in this case, and the category is male. And this is the structure that we are trying to use for pie charts very often. So if we take another example, so here we have a pie chart that has been split into 3 parts, and it's talking about US eating preferences. And you can see that there are 3 things listed. We've got beef, we've got chicken, and we've got no meat. So think about this. If you were to describe just one part of this pie chart, what would be a phrase that we could use? And you can see at the bottom we've got that same structure, that sentence frame. Percent plus group plus verb plus category. Okay. Now you might have to change this around. It's the US eating preference. So here's an example. 1/3 of Americans prefer eating beef. So it's the same thing. 1/3, okay, it's a fraction technically, but it's the number, it's the data that we're talking about here. The group is again Americans, the verb prefer eating, and the category beef. So you can see it in lovely colours there, just to get it in your mind. What if we spoke about any other part of the actual pie chart here? Well, let's just go back up. So for example, we could say 33% of Americans like chicken. That would work exactly the same thing. 33%, our percentage of Americans, like is our verb, and the category chicken. So you can see how we can change this around, this sentence frame, and we can use it in many different situations to describe pie charts. Okay, so let's look at the next one. Okay, so another example of this. So here you can see again the pie chart is split into 3, but it's a slightly different sort of fraction of the way we've split it here. Okay, so why don't we talk about any one of these? So these are Amazon purchases, and we've got books, we've got food, and we've got shoes. Okay, so one example we could have is this. Half of last year's Amazon purchases consisted of books. Okay, so this is a slightly more sort of high level sentence, perhaps with some higher level vocabulary, but you can see the actual structure of it is exactly the same. So half of, if this is acting as our percentage, last year's Amazon purchases, that's our group, consisted of, the part of that was consisted of is our verb, and books is our category. We also could have 25% of items purchased on Amazon last year were shoes. It works exactly the same way. And a quarter of the total sales on Amazon were for food. So I can't quite see the last sentence at the bottom because my camera is in the way, but I'm sure that you can read it. Okay, so let's move on and look at some more examples. Okay, so this is another practice for you, okay? So we've got a similar pie chart. It's split in very much the same way as the one that we just saw. The only difference is that's in 3D and that one's flat. And also this one on your screen now is talking about tourist destinations for UK tourists in 2008. And we've got France, we've got Spain, and we've got New York. So using the same sentence frame, percentage plus group plus verb plus category, have a quick think. How could we describe any of those three parts of the pie chart? Okay, here's an example. Half of last year's Amazon purchases consisted of books. Well, that's not correct, is it? Well, that's not going to work. Oh, I see. I remember what I did. So this is the example. So this is the part where we're going to be changing what we've got. So we've got half of last year's Amazon purchases consisted of books. That was what we had in our previous pie chart. So now, because I've just remembered, we're going to change this for the current pie chart. So we're going to say something like this. Half of British tourists went to France. Now, the reason we're saying went to France, we're definitely using past tense here, is because there is a date, 2008. So it definitely happened in the past. Okay, so another example from our previous pie chart, 25% of items purchased on Amazon last year were shoes. How could we adapt this for France, for Spain or New York? Well, one example would be this. 25% of UK residents visited Spain. And you can see it's the same exact sentence frame. Percent, group, plus verb, plus category. And just one more. A quarter of the total sales through Amazon were for food. Let's say, let's change this one for New York. A quarter of all holidays were to New York. So exactly the same method. Okay. So let's move on to some common errors that Michael and I see all of the time because the students aren't using the right sentence frames. So we're going to show you the error and I want you to think, how could you correct it? How could you actually use the right thing? Okay, so this is a classic one. Beef is 1/3. So what's the issue there? Why would that not be a good sentence to write in your IELTS task 1? Well, it should be something more like this. 1/3 of people eat beef. So you can see that it's following the structure we mentioned before, okay? So percentage plus group plus verb plus category. Another example. People bought 25% of their food on Amazon. Yeah. People bought 25% of their food on Amazon. What's the problem with this? Well, if you're thinking, actually, that looks like a pretty good sentence, grammatically, yes, it is. There's no problem. But it's not really describing that pie chart there. Because the pie chart on the bottom left, it's talking about Amazon purchases. It's not talking about where food is bought. The pie chart on the right there, it would be better for this sentence because, as you see, this is where people buy food, and we've got Amazon, supermarket, and a market. People bought 25% of their food on Amazon. This would fit better for the pie chart on the right. So that's just a logical error, really. Okay, how about this? Amazon purchases is half of beef. What's the problem with this one? Well, if we look at the example, it should be half of Amazon purchases were for beef. So the sentence in red is not really following our sentence frame of percent plus group plus verb plus category. Okay, so here's one for a bit of practice, okay? So hopefully at some point you will write some sentences. I'll try and do this a little bit more slowly, okay? And you can see we'll share some of this later on. There's a link which won't be live for you on screen, but I will be able to share this in the after the live stream. Okay, so this is an example of writing task 1 for IELTS. So it says the graph below shows the average percentages of when certain activities are being done. Summarize the information by selecting and reporting the main features and make comparisons where relevant. Okay, so you can see there are three different pie charts here, and we're going to look at each of these in order. So we're not actually going to write the full task essay here. We're just going to look at the pie charts. So the first one you can see is about sleeping, and it's got 4 categories. You've got the percentages there, and it's different times of day. Okay, so if we take that, could we write a sentence about any part of that? So just think about it. If anyone wants to actually write a sentence and put it into the chat there. So Michael is in the chat saying hello to everyone as they come in. Don't be shy, guys. So this is a pie chart, and it's all about sleeping, different times of day, and we're using the same sentence frame that we've been talking about, which is, so we mention the time of, so we mention the percentage, we mention the group, then we talk about a verb, and then we talk about the category. Okay, so any takers? Anyone would like to write a sentence about any part of this pie chart? Okay, I guess you guys are shy. So let me put up an example sentence. So for example, 39% of sleeping happened between 12 a.m. and 6 a.m. Okay. So let's look at the next part. So this is leisure activities. Very similar, it's times of day. We've got the percentage, and it's split in a slightly different way, of course. And we've got the working. Okay, so here what we've got is the question again, and we're just going to go through a quick example of okay, right, so we're going to go just looking at the messages from Mike in the chat there. So we're going to have a look at an example of the essay that we might write for this. So the model answer, let's just read it out. So the times when people are sleeping, working and doing leisure activities are broken down in the given 3 pie graphs. Overall, except for leisure activities, most activities are primarily done over a 12-hour period. The majority of sleeping is done between 12 a.m. and 6 p.m. 39% of sleeping is done between 12 a.m. and 6 a.m. and 30% is done between 6 a.m. and 12 p.m. Only 31% of sleeping is done during the remaining half of the day. Likewise, the majority of work is done between 6 a.m. and 6 p.m. 35% of work is done between 6 a.m. and 12 p.m., while 40% is done between 12 p.m. and 6 p.m. During the remainder of the day, only 35% of work is done. Leisure activities buck this trend, as the vast majority of leisure activities are done between 6 p.m. and 12 a.m. 40% of leisure activities are done during this time. 20% of leisure activities are done between 6 p.m. and 12 a.m., with 5% more being done between 12 p.m. and 6 p.m., and 5% less being done 12 a.m. and 6 a.m. Okay, so this is really an example of how we're using this sentence frame. We're using it quite a lot, but this is really one of the best ways to report the data in a pie chart. There aren't many ways that you can actually do this in English. Okay, so we're going to have a quick change over of what we're doing. So the first thing I'm going to do is try and put the camera back on and see how that works. So, there you go, the light. I'm back. It's Phil, if you're just joining us again. So we've just gone through some sentence frames for how you would approach writing the task 1, because the issue with pie charts is that you can't just report the data in the same way that you might do it in your native tongue, because in English there's really only a few ways that we can do this. And the example we saw before is that we talk about the percentage, then we talk about the group in the pie chart, then we talk about the verb, and then the category. So 25% of Americans like eating beef, for example. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to look at an example from a real student. So this is Aman Khan, probably saying that wrong, sorry about that. And they've submitted an essay for us to have a look at. So if you want to do this, if you want to see us mark and give feedback about your essay live, absolutely for free. And you know, Michael and I, we have a lot of experience doing this. We've been teaching IELTS for many years. You can send an email to corrections@theieltsgrind.com. If you look in the description, you'll see the email there. Just send us an email and we will look at one of your essays and give you that feedback. Okay, how's everything going? Okay, I can see Michael saying hello Phil to me. Hello Michael, how are you? So I should explain, so normally when Michael and I do these live streams on Friday, I have quite a nice library in the building that I live in, and we do it down there. But unfortunately in Taiwan we've had a few more cases of COVID-19 than we've had in the past, and I can't use that today, so I'm actually in my office. It's not as pretty, but the information is just as good. Okay, so if you want to follow along with this, if you're watching the live stream, there is a link to the document that I'm looking at here. You can find that in the actually in the description. There's a link there, and if you're watching playback later on, you can find that link there as well. Okay, so oh cool, we got Leonardo in the chat, excellent. So if you want us to answer any questions, Leonardo, don't hesitate to I'm here, and Mike's also in the chat. Okay, so this is an example. You've probably seen this one before. It's about percentage of water used for different purposes in 6 areas of the world. I can't remember exactly which book it's from, but it's from one of the Cambridge past paper books. It's quite a famous one. I've taught it a few times. Okay, so we can see the original here from Ahmad, and he wrote 163 words, excellent. And on the face of it, it wasn't too bad actually what he wrote. There was a lot of good things in here. So you can read through it if you want, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at this basically in the way that it's graded. So you're graded for your writing in 4 different criteria. So we're going to go through each one right now, and I'm going to tell you what I think was good about it, what could be improved, and the band score I would give for that particular criteria, and then at the end we're going to see what I think this student would get for this overall. Okay, so hopefully everyone can see this, and we're going to go down and we're going to have a look at task achievement. Okay, so we're just gonna, I'll read it through one time, and then for everything else I'll just focus on particular sentences. So he wrote, the pie charts below illustrate percentage of water consumption for various purposes in 6 different regions of the earth. So I'm just going to look at this at the moment from the idea of task achievement. So how well did this writer actually answer the question? Did they do the thing that the examiner was hoping that they would do? So all of this information, how it's graded, is if you go literally to any of our videos, you can find in the description, and probably in the description of this video, there's a link to the publicly sort of available band descriptors. So this is a document that tells you, if you're writing and you're speaking, exactly what the examiner expects in each of the 4 categories. And if you do what they ask you to do for a particular band score, that's the band score you're going to get. It's not really rocket science in that sense. It can be a little bit tricky to actually do it. You just got to practice. Okay, so in that first sentence, the thing that I have highlighted, it's a common mistake, the pie charts below. Now, when you're writing this, you've got to imagine that the examiner cannot actually see the pie charts, the data in any of the task ones. So by saying the pie charts below, I'm looking, there are no pie charts below. So it doesn't make sense. Does it really fall into task achievement? I think it's just it's illogical. Just don't do this. The pie charts illustrate. That's what we should say. Okay, the next part. So interestingly, 4 of the 6 areas of the world use particularly large proportion of water for agricultural purposes. South America, 71%, etc., etc. So what I've done here, I've highlighted interestingly. Now, the thing that we shouldn't do is say that it's interesting, because that's bordering on an opinion. Now, because Michael's not here, I'm going to pretend that I came up with this, but there's a really great saying that we have, particularly Michael, we came up with this. So in task 1, there is no I. You don't write about your opinions because you're not asked to write about your opinion. There is no why. You don't have to explain why the data happened. You just have to explain the data that you see. And there's no conclusions. There's no conclusion because we don't have a thesis. There is no opinion, so there shouldn't be any conclusion. So here I don't like this word interestingly. I wouldn't use it. And as you can see, a lot of the other stuff is actually green. So what I liked about this writer is that all the sentences at the beginning of the paragraphs, for example, Europe and North America are the regions that markedly consume large amount of water for industrial objectives. This is a great topic sentence. It's very clear, and the paragraphs are very well defined. So all of that stuff's pretty good. But if you look down here, I only gave the writer a band 5 for this part, because I said, so the student clearly identifies key features and makes an attempt to compare them throughout the essay. However, there is no clearly defined overview. If we look back, after the introductory sentence where he tells us what the pie charts are about, he jumps straight into one of the main features, that 4 of the 6 areas use a lot of water for agriculture. And yeah, there's no overview. There's no big trend. So what I would like to see here is something like this. Overall, most of the water is used for agriculture, with the exception of whatever it might be. So you need a sentence like this. If you don't have a clear overview, which can come at the beginning or at the end of the task 1, you're going to be limited to a band 5 in task achievement. So if the writer had written an overview, I think I would probably give him at least a 6.5, if not a 7. I think he did quite well, apart from that one little thing. Okay, so let's move on to the next part. Okay, so we're looking at, I can see there's a big conversation going on in the chat. So if you are watching and you want to talk to us, I'm here on camera, Michael is in the chat. He's very friendly. He's got a bit of a scrabbly beard, but don't hold that against him. He is there to answer your questions. Okay, so we're going to look at the coherence and cohesion, which is the second thing that you are graded on. And so again, you can read this in your own time. You can look at the document that's there's a link to that document in the description. So I'm only looking at the ideas of coherence and cohesion. So if you look with my little code, where red, highlighted in red, is something that is something that should be changed, it's not great, and green, which is good, I didn't find anything really wrong. There were no mistakes really here, but there's not a lot of green either. Okay, so I've highlighted things like furthermore, comparing to Europe and North America. We'll talk about that in a moment. Percentage of used water. So I think that for this criteria, probably the student would get about 6.5. Okay, so overall the essay is very clear, easy for the reader to follow. This is because it's really well defined, and things, sentences sort of link on from each other. There's some limited use of linking phrases, quite limited. Furthermore is really the only one that I could find, and I like the topic sentences, as I mentioned before. This really made it very easy to follow. So I think that the student did okay here, but they could do much better. First of all, we definitely would want to have that overview overall. Then possibly in the first paragraph, we'd use phrases like firstly, secondly, in addition, moreover, meanwhile. These kind of linking phrases. That would make it kind of flow a little bit better, I think. And it would definitely strengthen this part of the essay. But overall, not too bad. Nothing dragging the score down, I would say. Okay, so we are moving on to perhaps this writer's Achilles heel. So the thing that kind of weakens them a lot, and it's the same for many students: lexical resource, vocabulary. Okay, so you can see here I've highlighted a lot more in red, but there's still quite a lot of green. Okay, so let's go through it first of all. So in the introduction, I like the phrase so water consumption for various purposes. I think this is an excellent collocation. Various purposes. These are two words that go together naturally, and the writer has used this very well. Then they said, so various purposes in 6 different regions of the earth. Now, grammatically, it's not wrong, regions of the earth. It's not a grammatical error here, but I don't like it that much. Regions of the earth. I just think that it's a fairly basic phrase here. So I might say, instead of the earth, regions of the globe. I think globe might be a better phrase here. So it's just not quite what a native would say. This is the issue. And then following error I've got here, 6 areas of the world. Yeah, it's it's okay, but I don't know. Just 6 areas of the world, perhaps it's okay. If we changed regions of the globe, 6 areas of the world, I think that would be okay. But I obviously highlighted it. It didn't sit well with me. I love the phrase agricultural purposes. Again, a great collocation. But industrial objectives below, it's not quite what we're talking about here. Industrial uses might be better. Industrial processes, perhaps, but not objectives. It's not quite the right phrase to use here. Moving on, great use of words like water consumption. He's used this a few times before, but it is a good phrase, and the writer's using it in exactly the right way throughout. Another great little phrase structure that he used was, so water consumption both for and This is a great little phrase to use, and it really kind of does push the score up, I think. So again, agricultural goals, industrial objectives, it's not quite the right phrase. Uses, purposes, these kind of phrases would work better. Okay, so moving on. So we have the phrase comparing to Europe and North America. I think we should say compared here. It's yeah. So I'm just looking at messages that are popping up. So if you want to ask any questions at all, don't forget that Michael is in the chat. He's ready to go. He's quite eager to answer your questions about writing or anything else. Okay, so this phrase, comparing to Europe and North America, as I said, I would say compared to. Comparing is not the right thing, because we're making a direct comparison here. It's not the right word. Okay, so less water is consumed for industrial purposes. I'm not sure if I would use is consumed for industrial purposes. I think is dedicated to, is used for, I think. Consumption, I don't know if it's quite the right word. It just didn't sit quite well with the sentence, not for me anyway. Then moving on, in the rest of 4 areas of the planet. So here, there is a grammatical error, which we're talking about in a moment, but it's the same idea of that we've had before, regions of the earth, 6 areas of the world. I don't know if I like 4 areas of the planet. It's just not quite the right phrase. I think 4 areas, the rest of the 4 areas, it would work on its own, I think. Yeah. Okay, so moving on, a great phrase that they used here was percentage of used water for domestic use is approximately equal in all regions. Approximately equal in all regions. I like that phrase. I think that was a pretty good one. Almost equal could work as well. Might even work better. And finally, except South America, which consumed 19% of its water for domestic use. Again, definitely consumed here is not the right word. Used, something, used would be better. Consumed 90% of its water for, just doesn't make sense. Okay, so I actually think that overall they'd get quite a good score here, quite a high one. I'd say around a 7. Really depends maybe on the opinion of the examiner, but I think it'd get quite high. And I've got the notes there, so they've used good vocabulary throughout. There's just some misuse of collocations and individual words here and there. But even at band score 7 in lexical resource, you can still make mistakes. You don't have to be a perfect native to hit that level for lexical resource. Okay, so apparently grammatical range dollar accuracy. I think that's meant to be and. Let's see if I can change that. Okay. Oh, never mind. We'll sort that out later. Now it's grammatical range and dollar accuracy. Okay, so again, this is something that is always going to bring down people's scores, because I think grammatical range and accuracy is quite difficult. Most students develop this more slowly. Okay, excellent, it's gone back to end. Okay, so again, there's a lot more red here than green, and I'll explain it. Okay, so the pie charts below, so we don't want that, illustrate the percentage of. We're missing a very basic word. We need the article, the percentage of water consumption. So the next thing, 4 of the 6 areas of the world used particularly large portion of water. It's the same issue. We're missing an article, used a particularly large portion. So this writer has really got a few issues with basic grammar, the articles, but it's something that a lot of people struggle with. So Michael and I, and the IELTS Grind, we're based in Taiwan, and a lot of our students who speak Chinese, they don't actually have this in their language. They have words like the and an, and they really struggle with this. So if there's anything that's very different in your language compared to English when it comes to grammar and basic sentence structure, something you've got to really concentrate on. I know that when I learned French, things like nouns and adjectives were always, kind of swapped around, and that really, it was difficult for me to process for a while until I practiced it. Yeah. Okay, so moving on to the next paragraph here. So there's one big grammatical mistake here. So Europe and North America are the regions that markedly consumed large amount of water. So we could do 2 things here. We could say consumed large amounts of water, so maybe we're missing an S on amount, or we could say the largest amounts of water. We could use a superlative, and this would improve the score probably, because comparatives, superlatives, they really make sense here. Okay, so I've just highlighted this one word, is. Why would I do this? Well, the thing is, the writer has been using the present simple throughout, and if we go all the way back up to the top, and you can see the actual question here, it doesn't give us a year. Okay, so when pie charts and other data, it doesn't give you a year, especially in the past, that means it's okay to use the present simple. Okay, so they're doing a good job here. And if we go to the next paragraph, less water is consumed. I said that I didn't like the word consumed here, but I do like the grammar. Is consumed. They're using the passive. This is really good high-level grammar, really. It's not that easy to do, and they've used it perfectly. They've used it a few times, actually. So this is really great. Now, the other thing I've highlighted here, so in the brackets, the writer's kind of listing things. They've done this a few times. Now, I don't mind it so much here, where it says Europe 15% and North America 13%. But the other cases, I don't like it. Yeah. So I think here, South America 71%, comma, Southeast Asia 81%. That's okay because they're using the right punctuation. But here, they're definitely not using punctuation. Sorry, they are using punctuation, but that's not the issue I have with it. The issue I have with it is they're missing an opportunity to use a brilliant phrase, which is respectively. So we could use, so less water is consumed for industrial purposes in the rest of the areas of the world, and we could say namely South America, Southeast Asia, Central Asia and Africa, which use 10%, 12%, 5%, and 7% respectively. So I just think that it's a little bit repetitive perhaps. So that's probably why I highlighted it earlier on. Okay, and the last sentence, I really like this. Which consumed 19% of its water for domestic use. Now, I didn't like the vocabulary used, but I did like the grammar because this is a relative clause, and that's really great to use. So I think overall I'd give that a band 6 for grammar, just because of the things I've mentioned. So if we add everything up together, so we've got band 6, we've got band 7, we've got 6.5, and we've got 5. That would be a little over a band 6, but we would round it down to a band 6. It wouldn't quite get 6.5. Okay, so this is really how you need to approach these task ones. You're going to be looking at each section, and if you've got a good tutor, if you've got someone that can actually sit down and break it down like this, you're much more likely to improve. So actually, when Ahmed posted this, he posted this in a Facebook group, and I looked at the responses. A lot of them were just kind of spam, trying to sell him a free certificate. Don't buy these free certificates, they don't actually work. But the feedback that he got was maybe a 5. But if you want to get proper feedback like this, where we actually go into detail, we talk about why you got a 6, how you can improve it, then don't hesitate to send us an email at corrections@theartsgrind.com. So you can find that email in the description, and you can leave a comment on this video, on any video on the channel, if you want us to look at your writing and give you proper feedback. Okay, so the other thing is, if you look in the chat, we also have set up a Discord channel. So I will see if I can actually go into it. So let's see. There we go. So you can find that we are trying to, hopefully we can see this on the screen. So we're trying to grow this Discord channel, because it's going to be a place where you can get access to Michael and myself, and you can ask us questions. We're very happy to help. We like the IELTS, so we like talking to people, and we're going to build this up. So eventually we're going to have a place where students can come and talk. You can practice your speaking with each other. You can do this on the Discord. But the problem is, at the moment, it's just really Michael and myself, and we speak English, and we don't need that much practice. But if you come and join us, that'll be great, because you're going to really improve, because you get to talk to us and other students. So that is the live stream for today. So so any questions that we've got? Yeah. Okay, so I will say goodbye for now, and we will see you next week. So I think next week will probably be Michael looking at some essays. But at any point, if you've got any questions, anything that you would like us to talk about, don't hesitate to leave a message. I'll see you guys later. I've got something in my eye.